microphone or no?
You don't have to. You're fine.
Yeah, just leave it on.
Alrighty. Great.
Hiện em hay bảo sẽ dùng on
So, oh, you're the only person with the camera on. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So right now, I think I'm the MC, so I should put my smiley face and welcome everyone.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. So now I'm just waiting if they're all here.
Okay, smile.
Yeah. I'll try. Thank you. Okay, so everyone's, here. So hello, everyone. How are you doing? So you can use your chat box and say hi. And, if you're from somewhere else, besides Thailand, please greet and then say your hello in your language and, state your country. So we know where you're from. Thank you so much for joining this first webinar from TEFL program. And our TEFL program is a TEFL, is the teaching English of the foreign language. And this one is, we are under the Faculty of Education, Chulalongkorn University. So thank you so much for coming and join this webinar with us. So this is our webinar, and this is going to broadcast to all over the world. And you are right here live with us, with our wonderful two professors here, Dr. Willy Renandya and Dr. Park In Song. And they're going to give you a very, very great insights about this 10 habits of successful, language learners of English. So if you have any questions, so please save it until the end of our talk. Then once we are finished the talk, then you can ask the question. Or if you have questions along the way, then please do. We have the Q&A chat box that you can use that to type up your question. So also you can write your name and your organization, then followed by the questions too. So we can address your name correctly and properly. Thank you so much. So let's see how many are here right now. So we have about 26. This is the very, very first webinar that, we host large numbers of attendees and, audience. So I think this is going to be a great idea. And we, this seminar or this webinar got overbooked, so thank you so much for your participation and for you showing your interest. So my name is Oat, O-A-T, Oat, and I'm the TEFLer. I'll graduate this semester, but I was so happy and excited to host for this first webinar here from TEFL program. So everyone say hi. We'll be right there. So I think we expect a lot more. So we're gonna wait for maybe 5 more minutes and then we'll start the sessions, okay? Thank you very much. So let me double check how many we're all here. Okay. All right. And let's see some chat box here. Hello. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. So now we have the audience from Indonesia. Okay, very good. Selamat pagi. Okay, hello, selamat pagi. Very good. Lots and lots from Indonesia right now. Excellent. Hi. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Oh, from Sydney. Okay, very good. Thank you. From Australia. How are you? Thank you so much. How's the weather there? And okay, sawadee krap, and Philippines. Hello, how are you? From Manila, Philippines. Very nice to see you all. You know, this webinar, I think it's very nice to see a lot of people from all over the world who love the language and learn the language and want to see what is the secret, what is the 10 habits of successful language learners of English. And today we're gonna try to find out the secrets from these two distinguished professors here, Dr. Willy and Dr. Park In-song, and they are great. I always enjoy, you know, attending their seminar and their workshop, especially in a conference, because they are very lovely, very engaging, and it's very easy to follow, and it's also very useful too. And most of all, it's fun. Okay, hello from Philippines. Hi. So lots and lots of people here. So in about 3 minutes, we're gonna start, okay? So now we're live and all the attendees are coming. So please be patient with us. We can't wait to start the talk very soon, but you know, we got over 200 or 300 you know, subscribes who wants to and show that they want to attend this webinar. So we want to just wait for a little bit to make sure that everyone's here. So, and can you hear us? Yes? You can use the, you know, thumbs up here or the reaction. Can you hear that? Yeah? And once again, my name is Oat, O-A-T, Oat, and I'll be the host and the moderator for today's webinar sessions. Okay, great. So yes, thank you, Desi. Very nice. Okay. Some of the audience, you know, already recognize and want to say hi to Dr. Willy and Dr. Park. Selamat pagi, everyone from Indonesia and from Philippines. How do we say good morning in Philippines? Is it, you know, so since this is the language learners, it's not going to be confined with only English. So now I can learn your language as well, starting from a very short phrases, things like this. Okay, managa, maga is good morning. Okay, I don't know if I say it correctly, but okay, this is the learning process, right? We're gonna have to mistake somewhere somehow. Magadan, umaga. Okay, very nice. Great job. Thank you so much. Good morning. And how do you say hello? Clap, clap. Okay. Thank you. I'm trying. So very good. So now we have 1 minute and then we'll start. Sorry for a long wait because we want to make sure that everyone's here and everyone's ready for this first webinar sessions. And thank you again for your cooperation because during this webinar, we will ask you to please put the mute mode so that the sessions won't run smoothly. And also if you have any questions, either to the speakers or to us as so we have like a team here, then go ahead and use the Q&A sessions or the Q&A will screen so to make sure we don't have the duplicated questions, and then we will read the questions on your behalf. Okay, so if you please write your name or just state your name and the country or organization so I can address your name and your organization properly and correctly. Thank you very much. Okay, I think it's time now. So let me officially start this first webinar session. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first Chulalongkorn TEFL program webinar series 1. Allow me to introduce myself once again. My name is Chanukrit Tienkalaya. It's such a long name, so you can call me in the short one, Oat, O-A-T, Oat. It's my pleasure to welcome you and also being a host and also the moderator for this first webinar sessions. First of all, we would like to thank you, Litu, for their generous help in providing us with this platform to accommodate our larger than usual audience for this webinar. Litu provides the platform we are using today, and we are very grateful for their collaborations with Chula TEFL program. Before we formally open the talks today, I would like to give some reminder. All right, so let me share the screen. Second, please. Okay. Hold on a second. All right, make sure you see these. Okay. So this is our, series 1. As you can see on the poster, we have, distinguished scholars, educators from Professor Paul Nation, Dr. Willy, Dr. Unsen Park, and also all of our great experts in different kinds of fields. But tomorrow, just a little advertising a little bit tomorrow, Sunday, June 28th from 10 to 12, Emeritus Professor Paul Nation will give a talk with us on the topic of what matters in vocabulary learning. And today's talk, of course, we are looking forward to hear a great talk, top 10 habits of successful language learners of English from Professor Park Eun-sung and also Dr. Willy. So once again, let me remind you just a little bit. The first one, if you register your name, and then your Zoom name doesn't match, so please change the name a little bit so that we can, you can use the register name so our team can more conveniently monitor your class attendance. And if you don't know how to change the name, you can just go to the participant, find your name, then right click. After you right click, you will see rename. Then you will see the little box right here, and then you can put the name that you register. Very easy one. The second one, please stay on mute. So this will be reduce any background noise which could interfere with this session. And if you have any questions, we have this Q&A chat box right here. The Q&A is different from the chat box though. So make sure if you have questions, use the Q&A features right there. You can write your questions there. And if you don't mind, you can write your name and your organization so we can address your name and read the questions on your behalf and address your name correctly. And last but not least, everyone, guess what? Please enjoy this first webinar. I think it's going to be a great webinar ever for you to learn all about top 10 habits of the language learners of English. Okay, but first of all, it is my pleasure to welcome and ask Assistant Professor Dr. Pranpimon Sukhawati, our lovely Director of TEFL Program, Faculty of Education, Chulalongkorn University, to give the opening speech and welcome speech. And she's kindly prepared a very nice welcoming clip for all of you. So let's have a look. Oops. Okay.
Hi everyone. As we are facing coronavirus pandemic crisis as the global issue, and never before have we encountered educational disruption on such a scale. The educators around the world are looking for the best practice to ensure that learning never stops. TEFL webinar series is taking innovative actions to unlock solutions to respond to the situation, and we are trying to find means to support learners and teachers to keep on provisioning education at distance. In times like this, I'd like to express my appreciation to all educators in ELT who never give up on sharing knowledge to our learning community. Without their contributions, this project might not be possible. Moreover, I'd like to thank my colleagues, the TEFL committees, and the TEFL student team from the Faculty of Education for making the event happen. Distance never matters in education, and learning is lifelong. Welcome to our TEFL webinar series on Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Parpimo Sukawati, our Director of TEFL Program, for your wonderful welcoming speech. So now, most of us, if not all of us, have experienced learning language at some point in our lives. Some struggle, while some strive and become successful language users. Looking back in the past, we may or may not notice which of your habits have contributed to your success. Today, we have with us here two very well-known language teachers, educator, Professor Willy, Renandya, and Professor Park Eun-song, to help us uncover the top 10 habits of successful language learners of English. So please, right now, but before that, let me introduce our speakers for today first. Dr. Park Eun-song is Professor of TESOL and Applied Linguistics at Sogang University, South Korea. She received a master's degree in TESOL and a doctoral degrees in education in Applied Linguistics from Teachers College of Columbia University. Her primary research interest includes L2 input processing and the interface of theory and practice of L2 learning and teaching. Her most recent interest focuses on the role of agency and identity in refugee background students. And I'm very sure that most of you all knows about Dr. Willy, even though he told me to just introduce him for just one sentence, but I prepared a long introduction. So please let me allow, so that if you haven't known him so much, then we'll learn about him, because he's the widely published language teacher and educator and TESOL specialist with a particular interest in professional educator development, TESOL, pedagogy, and extensive reading. In professional educator development, TESOL, pedagogy, and extensive reading and listening. For over 20 years, he has worked with the pre-service teacher and in-service teachers throughout the Asian regions, including Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Singapore. Dr. Willy is currently based in Singapore, and he's a full-time ELT Principal Professor at the National Institution of Education, or NIE. Dr. Willy has published numerous books and research articles. He regularly gives invited presentation at local, regional, and international conferences, and conduct practical and engaging workshops and seminars in schools and university. His talks are very practical, entertaining, and fun. So please help me welcome our two very distinguished experts, Ajahn Willy Renandya and Ajahn Park Eun-song. Take it away, it's all yours. All right. Hi, Dr. Park Eun-song. Yes,
Yeah,
you can start.
sorry.
Hello.
Hi, 1 minute. Okay.
No problem.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh,
we
okay, good,
can.
good, good. It's working. Okay, 1 second.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for that cheerful and energetic introduction, Oat. I also want to thank Dr. Pompimore for inviting me to this seminar. And thank you to the audience for your virtual presence here. Many thanks for spending your precious Saturday morning with us. Oops. So as you can see, I'm not really technologically savvy. This is actually my first webinar, so I hope I survive through this. Okay, 1 second. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yes, we can.
All right, okay. So my name is Eun-Sang Park. I'm very happy and excited to be presenting with Dr. Willy, whom I'm sure all of you know very well, since he's really a superstar in ELT here in Asia, not just in Asia, but all over the world. I've collaborated with him before, and it's always a pleasure presenting with him. So most of you probably don't know me as well as you know Dr. Willy. I teach in the English department at Sogang University, which is based here in Seoul, Korea. It's actually lunchtime here at 12 o'clock or 12:20. So as Ode introduced, Pak Willy and I'll be presenting the top 10 habits of successful language learners or English learners. I'll be presenting the first 5 and he'll do the other 5. And just to give you a little background, I come with a cognitive SLA background. So not surprisingly, you will see, okay, I need to go to the next slide. For some reason,
You have to point your cursor to your slide first. Click on it. Click once.
oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. I'm gonna need help here and there. So thank you. All right. So I come with a cognitive SLA background. So the 5 habits that I've chosen, I've grounded in SLA theory. So it's based on SLA literature during the past 50 years, and also based on my teaching experiences in the past 24 years. And also it's based on case studies of successful L2 users. Actually, you'll see that all 5 habits are drawn from SLA literature, but examples will come from case studies and biographies of successful L2 users. Okay, so I'd like to start by asking, what do we mean by a successful learner? Is there anyone that comes to your mind when you think of a successful English learner? You will notice that I'm using the word learner and user interchangeably, because successful language learners are able to use the language for their own communicative purposes. So they are also language users, but they haven't stopped learning yet. So they are learners at the same time. So who comes to your mind when you think of a successful English user? In preparing for this presentation, I've given this some thought. And a successful English user that I thought of was, let me show you a picture. Here's a picture. You recognize maybe the host here, Ellen DeGeneres show. And this is actually a very popular K-pop boy band, BTS. Maybe you are familiar with them, maybe not. But in the picture, you can see that the members of BTS have been invited as guests at Ellen DeGeneres show. And I want you to pay special attention to the person sitting closest to Ellen right here. Let me see if okay, this boy or this man, some of you may know him, some of you may not know him. He looks like this. He's actually the leader of the band. And his name is Namjoon Kim, or Kim Namjoon. And he's more affectionately known as RM. I think that's short for Rap Monster. Now, he's not only the leader of the band, but he's also the spokesperson for the band because of his excellent English skills. You can see that Alan is looking at him and talking to him, yeah? And interestingly, in this very show, RM talks about how he learned to speak English so well. And you can see in the picture that he's not the typical studious student tied to his desk, yeah? You will also see that the habits that I introduce here actually echo his own English learning habits and practices. So let me just first give you a preview of all the 5 habits of successful language learners. I just read them out. First, they immerse themselves in language input. 2, they notice language features. 3, they engage in interaction. 4, they seize every opportunity to produce output. And 5, they have visions. So nothing out of the ordinary, right? Let me just explain each habit one by one. Okay. So habit number 1 is they immerse themselves in language input. The key word here is input. Can you think of anyone who learned a language without any input? That's impossible. L2 learning cannot happen without input, and successful language learners make every effort to surround themselves with authentic language input. You can see different kinds of input here: Harry Potter book series, newspaper, sitcoms, movies, YouTube, yeah? You can read, you can listen, and all of these constitute authentic input. Input is the driving fuel of language acquisition, and everybody recognizes the importance of input. But what type of input and how much input do learners need? So what kind of input? The answer is actually very simple. The best type is authentic natural input that is also interesting and meaningful to the learner. So as human beings, we are all very similar in the sense that we all need input, right? But we also are very different in that we have different interests, yeah? This means that we have to find our own interesting, meaningful input that keeps us wanting to listen or read more. Let me bring back RM from BTS. Yeah? Obviously, he's a successful language user. And at that show that I showed you earlier, he mentioned that he learned English by watching the sitcom Friends. And I thought, when I heard that interview, I thought, wow, that's really smart, yeah? It's everyday, authentic, natural input with adorable, attractive, fun personalities. And because it's a TV show, even if you don't understand everything, the visual cues and context allow you to guess the meaning. Now let's see what RM says about how he learned English. This is actually, and these are his exact words, okay? He said, actually, my English teacher was the sitcom Friends. First, I watched it with Korean subtitle, and then next time I watched it with the English subtitle, and then I just removed it. So what he means by that is he removed all the subtitles altogether. Now, he also mentioned that he had all 10 DVDs of Friends, and he watched them over and over and over again, yeah? So no wonder he speaks English so well. So this type of continued input exposure is very, very important, especially in a foreign language environment. So by foreign language environment, I mean, what I mean is where the input is not readily spoken in the environment, right? So like in Thailand or in Korea, we are in a foreign language environment. So we need authentic natural input that is interesting and meaningful. But how much input do we need? Again, the answer is very simple. We need tons of input. The more input, the better. So to get an idea of how much input learners need, it's kind of useful to compare input exposure in different types of school programs. Now I have a table here. I promise you this is the only table that I have inserted in this presentation. So bear with me just here. I'm gonna start from the bottom. This is in Canada. In Canada, students enrolled in mainstream submersion programs receive about 1,200 hours of input exposure per year. Okay, so that's in Canada. That's in an L2 environment. In immersion programs, this is actually French immersion program, but in any kind of immersion program where the subject matter is taught in English or in French immersion program, students receive about 500 to 1,000 hours of input exposure. Now, if we look at our situation in foreign language school programs like Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, how many hours of exposure do we get per year? 50 to 200 hours, only 50 to 200 hours of input exposure. In Korea, it's actually exactly 126 hours of input, and that is not enough. Yeah? A good deal of SLA happens incidentally, and that requires massive amounts of input. So school programs are not able to provide the amount of input that learners actually need. And this means that learners need to proactively seek for more input on their own outside of class. And successful learners like RM know this, and they go out of their way to look for meaningful and interesting input that works for them. Okay, so my first habit was input. Now, habit number 2. Successful language learners notice language features. Okay, the key word here is the verb notice. Noticing means that they pay attention. So successful learners pay attention to what fluent speakers say, yeah, and how they deliver the message. So they pay attention to not only the words, but also the form, how the meaning is expressed or encoded. They also pay attention to non-linguistic aspects, not just the language, but also paralingual aspects like facial expressions, gestures, and intonation. Let me call on my TA, teaching assistant RM again. Yeah, he's gonna be my helper today to help me out here. Again, as you may expect, he has very keen observational noticing skills, and he pays attention to linguistic features. When he was asked on an interview about his English learning strategies, this is what he said. He said, I used to watch interviews of famous singers and paid special attention to the type of expressions they used. So this is habit number 2. Successful learners notice or they pay attention to linguistic features. Now, moving on to habit number 3. Okay, successful learners engage in interaction. The key word, I have a pattern here. I'm highlighting all the keywords in red. The key word here is interaction. Input is not interaction. Input is important, but that's different from interaction. They are different in the sense that input is one way, whereas interaction is two-way communication. So interaction necessarily involves 2 or more speakers working together to construct meaning. From a SLA, second language acquisition theoretical perspective, interaction is known to be beneficial for 2 reasons. One is interaction allows learners to negotiate for meaning, and interaction allows learners to notice the gaps. Now, I'll explain what I mean by this. So first is negotiation of meaning or negotiation for meaning. Okay, so what is meant by negotiation? Negotiation is communication in which the learner's attention is focused on resolving a communication problem or communication breakdown. you will notice that during conversation or interaction, miscommunication or communication breakdowns happen a lot, even between native speakers of English. And if that happens, especially for a learner who's not so confident, who's a non-native speaker, then his or her affective filter goes up. And in most cases, the learner abandons the conversation. But successful language learners, users, strive to make repairs and negotiate for meaning. And how do they do that? They use conversational devices to make repairs and negotiate for meaning. So what do I mean by conversational devices? I have examples here. They include strategies like comprehension checks, like do you understand? Or clarification requests. What do you mean by blah, blah? Excuse me, could you repeat one more time? I didn't hear you clearly. Confirmation checks, like do you mean this? Yeah. So these are conversation devices that both participants, interactants can use to negotiate for meaning. Let me just show you. I think it's easier to look at an example. So here's an example. Here we have a conversation between A and B. I'll just read the conversation. A says, and they have the church there. So the A was trying to say church, and he said church. And B is, he did not understand what A said, so the what? That's a clarification request. And A goes, the church. So repeats what he said. And then what does that mean? Another clarification request. A does not abandon the subject. Some learners will be like, oh, forget it, nothing, yeah? But A explains, modifies his or her output. Like American people, they always go there every Sunday. B goes, yes. A goes, you know, American people get dressed up to go to church, yeah? And then B goes, oh, do you mean church? That's a confirmation check. And A says, yes, to church. And he puts an R sound there, but the pronunciation is not perfect, but it's perfectly comprehensible, yeah? So what you're seeing here is that there was some type of miscommunication or misunderstanding. A did not understand, B did not understand what A meant by church, but they negotiated for meaning. They used conversational devices, yeah? And meaning was made clear. Okay, so that is negotiation of meaning or negotiation for meaning. And the second benefit of interaction is that it allows learners to notice the gap or notice the gaps. So what I mean by this is noticing the difference, and that's what we mean by gap, between what you hear and what you say. So let me try to illustrate with another example here. Teacher says, wow, you did very well on the exam. And the student says, thank you, I studied hardly for the exam. This is a Korean students make this error a lot. So thank you, I studied hardly for the exam. And teacher says, oh yeah, I know you studied hard. So notice that the teacher reformulated that hardly and said hard, studied hard. And the student noticed the gap, yeah, between what the teacher said, between what he said, I studied hardly, versus what the teacher said, studied hard. And he actually incorporates that correct form in his output. So that's what we mean by noticing the gap. Now, noticing the gap is very important, especially when you are exchanging feedback, when you receive feedback from interlocutors, yeah? There's a famous case study, I don't know if you have read this, by Schmidt and Froda. Schmidt is actually, this is Richard Schmidt. He was a professor at the University of Hawaii. In that study, Schmidt and Froda, Schmidt, who is a linguist, a famous linguist, he documented his own language learning experience of Portuguese in Brazil. And he wrote extensive journal entries of his Portuguese language learning experience. And he concluded that noticing was crucial in his own L2 development. He constantly noticed certain language features and incorporated them in his own output, in his own interaction with other interlocutors. So he later comes up with the noticing hypothesis. So in any case, so during the course of interaction, learners negotiate for meaning and repair their output to make it more comprehensible to the interlocutor. They also notice gaps in their interlanguage. And that was habit 3. Now we're moving on to habit 4. So habit 4, successful learners seize the opportunity to produce output. And the keyword here is output. Obviously, it's highlighted in red, yeah? Successful learners value output as much as input, and they try to use what they have learned by actively producing output, by speaking or writing. Let me bring RM back on the slide, okay? So he says, when I learn a new expression, I can't wait to try it out and get feedback on it. So like RM said, successful learners can't wait to try out new words and expressions in their output. Yeah, and that helps them cement those new expressions in their memory. And also, as he mentioned, feedback is a big part of L2 learning process. Yeah, and you can only get feedback after you have produced some output. If you haven't produced anything, you can't get, it's impossible to give you feedback on it, right? You need to say something or write something to get any kind of feedback. So another function of output is that it solicits feedback. There is one more function of output. Is that it allows you to notice the holes. This time it's not the gaps, it's the hole, okay? So another function of output is that it allows you to notice the holes. Let me just get a, so here, what this means is that what you think you can do, sorry, what you think you can do does not equal what you actually do or what you can do. To illustrate this, here is a quote I have from a student, okay? This is a student in an immersion program where she received a lot of input, okay? And she says, I understand everything anyone says to me, and I can hear in my head how I should sound when I talk, but it doesn't come out that way. I'm sure all of you have experienced this feeling. You can really relate to this feeling. You know how it should sound, but when you actually try to say it that way, it doesn't come out that way. And you don't know it until you try it out. And this has to do with the difference between receptive skills like listening and reading versus productive skills. Yeah. So imagine that you're watching an episode of Friends, like RM, and you are excited that you understand everything 100%. Just because you understand 100%, it doesn't mean that you are able to productively use all the expressions that are used in the Friends episode that you understood, yeah? So that's why we say output allows learners to notice the holes in their interlanguage, yeah? By producing output or by trying to produce output, they realize what they can do and what they cannot do. Yeah? And when you realize what you cannot do, then you know that that's what you need to work on, because that's the hole in your interlanguage. That's what you lack in your interlanguage. So reading and listening to a lot of quality input is necessary, but it isn't enough. In order to be a good speaker, you need to seize every opportunity to practice speaking, okay? So that is habit number 4. Now, moving on to habit number 5. Habit number 5 is a bit different from the ones that I have introduced so far here. Okay, so let's see what that is. So I've introduced 4 habits so far. So it has to do with input, noticing, interaction, and output. Now, language learning, you should all know because you have all learned languages with great effort, I'm sure. Language learning entails long, sustained effort to practice all of these habits that I've mentioned. How do learners sustain these habits? Yeah, because language learning it's actually long, tedious, requires a lot of effort, perseverance on the part of the learner, requires thousands of hours of input, interaction, output. Yeah, so how do successful learners sustain these habits? Now, habit number 5 will tell you. They have visions. So successful learners have visions. And by visions, I don't mean that they are psychic or they can predict the future or something like that. What do I mean by this? I mean, they have dreams, okay? Here, vision is a vivid mental image of the learner's ideal L2 self. So if you have a vision of who you want to be, who you aspire to be as an L2 user, then you set goals to achieve that dream. You motivate yourself. So to illustrate this, I am again going to bring out my TA or my assistant RM. Okay, this is the only picture I could find on the internet. So this is RM as a teenager. He said he used to watch Friends when he was at the tender age of 14 or 15, yeah? So I'm guessing that he's around that age over there. I haven't interviewed him personally, so I don't know what kind of vision or dream he had. But my guess is that he did have one, yeah? Maybe he envisioned himself performing internationally as a rapper, or perhaps he envisioned himself delivering a speech in English at the UN General Assembly, like you see in this picture here. That was a couple of years ago, I think. So whatever his vision may have been, he had a vision of his L2 ideal, L2 future self, and he made constant effort to practice and to use English to achieve his goal of this future imagined self. Now, okay, so successful learners motivate themselves, yeah? So they visualize what they want in life, who they want to become, and what they want to achieve. And that is their imagined future L2 selves. Here is an article, Park and Lee. This is under review. This is, so for those of you who are not familiar with my work, recently, my recent research interest involves North Korean students learning English in South Korea. And this is a case study. Park and Lee is a case study of a North Korean refugee student. We have chosen this participant because he stood out from all the other North Korean students in that his English skills were really, really good. He was self-motivated, self-directed, and he was constantly working on to improve his English. He even went to the US as an exchange student, yeah, to improve his English. For the case study, we interviewed him, and voila, we found something, yeah? He actually talked about his vision, and I really want to share a quote that illustrates his vision or his ideal L2 self. But before I share the quote, I should also let you know that this student defected from North Korea and he left his family behind. So the notion of peace and reunification of North and South Korea means a lot to him, because it means that reuniting means that he will be reunited with his family. Okay, so here's a direct quote from the interview. I'll just read this. if you want to achieve big dreams, you need good English skills. I need to speak English well in order to make my dreams come true. My dream is to become an influential politician so that I can work towards reunifying North and South Korea. I want to become a politician so that my voice can be heard, so that I can make a difference. So as you can see from this quote, this student's dream of becoming an influential politician who can make a difference is what motivated him to keep practicing and learning, as he believes that good English skills can be an asset that can help him become that important person. Okay, so with this in mind, I want to revisit, so that was habit number 5. I want to revisit the top 5 habits one more time. And in case you're interested in looking up relevant SLA theory or research related to that, I have flag posted some of these relevant concepts, SLA concepts, next to each habit. So number 1, again, they immerse themselves in language input, has to do with input hypothesis. They notice language features, noticing hypothesis by Schmidt. They engage in interaction hypothesis, and negotiation of meaning by Mike Long. They seize every opportunity to produce output. Of course, that's output hypothesis by Swain. And last but not least, they have visions. And that's Dornier's L2 motivational self-system, if you want to look it up. Okay, so these were my 5 habits. I don't know how I'm doing in terms of time, but I guess Dr. Willy will take over so that he can present 5 other excellent habits for you to keep in mind.
Thank you very much.
Okay, should I? Okay, thanks.
All right, perfect.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Willy Renandya. I'm from Singapore, and I teach at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University. Let me get started by doing a quick review, but instead of me telling you what Yoon Sung has presented just now, I'm going to give you a quiz. This is to make sure that you have been listening hardly. Or is it hardly or hard, Yoon Sung? Listening hard, yeah?
You crack me up. Okay.
Okay, listening hard and listening hardly. See, the first one is input. Okay, let's do it together with me. What is the second one? The second one, again, is this one. Yeah, you need to pay attention. The first one is you need to get a lot of exposure to the language. The second one is you need to also pay attention to some of the, not all of them, some of the language features that are present in the target language. The third one is you need to use the language in interaction so that you can get some feedback from the other speakers. And you also need to practice speaking and also practice writing as well. And finally, you need to have visions. I too have visions. When I retire, I want to teach in Thailand. I want to teach in Korea as well. And I'm sure I'll be working very hard to make my visions really become a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, now here are my 5 habits that I want to share with you. Please look at what I have there on the slides. The first one is gritty. The second one is growth mindset. The third one is about mistakes, about errors. The third one is about identity. And the last one is powerful strategy. So altogether, we'll have 10 habits. Let me go through each one of them one at a time. Gritty. Now, this is a fairly new concept in ELT, and I am drawing a lot from the work of Angela Duckworth. She wrote a book, which to me is one of the best books that I have read for the past 5 years or so. The book was so good, and I read the book 3 or 4 times. The message of the book is really, really exciting to me. It's really very useful for everyone. I think the key message is success is possible. Success is not limited to a small group of people, but success is possible. Success can be achieved if and only if you have these 2 things, if you are gritty. Now, if you are gritty, you have 2 things in you. 1, you have passion, and number 2, you have perseverance. I think Yun Sung talked quite a bit about perseverance as well, sustained effort over a period of time. Let me just spend a bit more time looking at what gritty means. Now, this is what Angela, said in her book. I think she summarized the whole book into these 2 ideas. If you want to learn a skill, if you want to develop a skill, it could be learning a new language. It could be learning how to swim. It could be learning how to play baseball and things like that. You need 2 things. First, you need to have some talent. We're not talking about a big talent, just talent that you have a hand, for example, and you have the equipment to play baseball. So that will be the initial part. You need that talent. And number 2, you need effort. Now, if you have these 2, then chances are very high that you'll be able to develop a sufficient skill in whatever you are learning. But she also says another important thing. So effort here is important. Number 2, if you want to become really, really good, if you want to become really skillful, if you want to become an expert in that area, then you need to put in another set of effort. So here, essentially, the key thing to remember is that effort is important, and in language learning, sustained effort is extremely important. Let me explain why grit is important, and why passion is important, and why sustained effort is important in language learning. I think Yun Sung also mentioned this earlier on. Language learning takes quite a bit of time. How long? I would say minimally 1 year. Minimally 1 year. But after 1 year, you can continue learning, but you need sustained effort at least for 1 whole year. So perseverance is important for that purpose. Effort is important as well. And number 2, the journey can be a little bit slippery. You make mistakes along the way. You slow down, you stop learning, and then you pick it up again. So it's long and slippery. Number 2, language learning, just like any other skill learning, requires a lot of practice. So practice, 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 practice. You can't learn a new language, you can't learn how to swim without practice. In fact, you need to do a lot of practice. And that reminds me of another book which I read a few years ago. This is another book that I read several times because it was so good. The name of the book is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And in that book, he said something which to me is very interesting. In order for you to become very, very skillful, to be very, very good in any kind of skill, whether you want to be a pianist, or whether you want to be a violinist or whatever, you need 10,000 hours of good supervised practice. Now, of course, in language learning, you don't need 10,000 hours. I think anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 hours will be more than sufficient. But the key point is this. I think we have heard about this very familiar saying, practice makes perfect. But if you look at the way many students have been learning English, I mean, they spend a lot of time, a lot of hours doing a lot of practice, and yet their English language ability is not up to standard. What's the problem? I think the problem is this. Perfect practice actually does not make perfect. It is perfect practice that makes perfect. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by perfect practice? Now here is some examples of successful English language learners or English language users who have gone through years of what I would call perfect practice. The first girl there is Bun from Thailand. She took the IELTS test a couple of years ago and she got a score of 8. The second one is Long, Justin Long from Vietnam. IELTS 7.5. He was about 16 or 17 years old. And the third one is Nga from Vietnam. And when she took the IELTS test a couple of years ago, her score was 8.5. Now, these are people who were able to achieve a very high level of English. And I would say that they have gone through what I have called perfect practice. What is that perfect practice? It's Yun Sung's habit number 1, which is input. So they immerse themselves in a lot of language. In the case of Bun, she enjoyed watching cartoons on TV or on YouTube. In the case of Long, that's the middle one, he enjoyed reading a lot of books, any kind of books. And the same thing with Na, she also enjoyed reading a lot of books, in particular books that got her really excited about finding who the bad guys is, or who the bad guys are in whodunit type or thrillers type of novels. So that is habit number 6, basically. Passion and perseverance and a lot of practice. So these 3 examples are successful language learners who are passionate about language learning and who develop their passion in the form of either reading or watching movies or watching cartoons on TV. Habit number 7 is about mindset. Is about mindset. Let me share with you something that I've seen happening in many students that I have had in my life. Now, very often, what happens is not because they don't have talent or they don't have intelligence or they're not smart enough. I think it's because they don't have these 2 things. They do not have self-esteem and they lack confidence. And that is what is slowing them down. They're not making progress because of this poor self-image, this poor self-esteem, and this poor self-confidence. They're often engaged in what has been called negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm going to fail again. I will never get better. I am dumb, actually. So, how do you get around this problem? Well, instead of saying, I can't do it, you can take a scissor, or pair of scissors, and remove the T, apostrophe T at the end. So instead of saying, I can't do it, you need to be able to say, I can do it. Now, the thing is, this is what we know from psychology. If you keep on saying the same thing again and again, again and again, for a month or for 2 months or 3 months, eventually you will believe that you actually can do it. And that is how you develop your self-confidence and also your esteem about yourself. Now, let me tell you the research behind this. There's this psychology professor, Carol Dweck, who has for many years been doing a lot of research looking at people and whether or not people have the same mindsets or whether they have different mindsets. What she found was really, really interesting. Now I can relate to this, very, very easily. And I'm sure you can relate to this also very easily. There's a group of people who, according to her, have what is called a fixed mindset. They don't believe that they can grow. They believe that they are, they are the way they are, and they are happy to be the way they are. And they don't seem to be making a lot of effort to grow beyond what they are currently able to do. On the other hand, there's another group of people. Now, these people believe that they can grow. Now, these people have what has been called, they have a growth mindset. Nothing is impossible for them. If they put their mind to it, they can do almost anything in life. So growth mindset and fixed mindset. I mean, we don't really fall into these two categories nicely. People are usually a little bit of both. Sometimes you have a growth mindset, and sometimes you have a fixed mindset as well. Now, this is a little bit about fixed mindset. You know, people with a fixed mindset usually, you know, avoid challenges. They give up very easily, and you know, they feel that effort is not very productive, effort is fruitless, and things like that. And they believe that their abilities are fixed. That is what I am born with. I don't think I can grow any further than what I have been able to achieve right now. So fixed mindset. Growth mindset, on the other hand, you can see here very clearly, they're not afraid of failures. In the face of failure, they will try again, they will try again, they will try again, they will put in more effort until they are able to achieve their goal. And I hope many of you in the audience have this growth mindset, because growth mindset is what makes a big difference in terms of your ability to achieve greater success in whatever you do, whether it's language learning, whether if you want to, you know, move ahead in your career, whatever. Growth mindset is the way to go. So that is habit number 7. The first one is to be gritty. The second one is, you know, having a growth mindset. And I believe that effective or successful learners of English have this growth mindset. Learning English, yes, it may be difficult, it may be tough, but it's doable, it's manageable, and I can do it. If other people can do it, if RM can do it, I can too. Habit number 8 is about errors. Now, this is extremely important. If you look at the picture on my screen, look at that guy. The guy is doing a lot of practicing, trying to hit the bull's head, actually, or the bull's eye. But look at how many times he misses, and he is only successful in barely hitting the bull's eye. In other words, he makes a lot of mistakes. But to him, you know, if he has a growth mindset, if he is able to put in extra effort, he'll be able to tell himself, and making mistakes are okay. And this is true in language learning as well. Along the way, you'll be making a lot of mistakes, but mistakes are evidence. Mistakes are proof that you are trying. If you don't make mistakes, chances are you're not doing anything, you're not trying hard enough, and you're not learning anything. This is what often happens in the language classroom. You know, students will tell you, teacher, I always feel embarrassed when I speak because my pronunciation is not perfect, because I make a lot of mistakes when I speak. Teacher, I feel embarrassed because my grammar is not good. I need to wait until my grammar is good enough for me to start writing, to start speaking, and to start interacting with other people. Teachers, I feel embarrassed because I don't have sufficient vocabulary. I want to say something, but it seems that every time I try to say something, the English words don't come up on my head. So I keep on using Thai or Vietnamese or Chinese or other languages instead of the target language. I always feel embarrassed because I don't have it. I don't have enough. I don't know enough of the language to be able to, you know, to be able to use the language for communication. I don't want to lose face. Effective learners, on the other hand, they make lots of mistakes, but they treat mistakes as their friends. And although they too feel embarrassed, but it doesn't slow them down. And, you know, they move on, they make more mistakes, and the cycle continues. So the key message is this: effective language learners treat errors as friends, not their enemies. Mistakes are good. Mistakes are evidence that you are learning something, that you're trying your best in order to learn whatever you're trying to learn. Number 9. Number 9 is extremely important these days, especially in the context of learning English as a global language. Learning English as a means for international communication. Now, it has to do with the idea behind identity, who you are, although your first, when you speak English, for example, you need to also project your identity as a speaker from Thailand, maybe, or a speaker from Indonesia, a speaker from Chinese. I think you need to maintain that sense. Number two is varieties. Embrace different types of language varieties spoken by different groups of people. And number three, effective learners also set very realistic goals. Let me explain what I mean by this. Sense of identity. I'm happy the way I am. I'm from Thailand, for example. I speak Thai. I'm fluent in Thai. And I speak with a nice Thai accent. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, the reason I often travel and, give workshops in Thailand is because when I go there, people address me as Ajahn Willy, which to me sounds really, really nice instead of Ajahn Willy. Willy sounds very serious, very formal. If I go to Korea, for example, Yun Sung will call me Willy or Pak Willy. But in Thailand, it's different. It's not Ajahn Willy, but it's Ajahn Willy. Can you say that together with me? 3, 2, 1. Ajahn Willy. So nice. Point number 2, variety. Embrace variety. Today in the world, you get to hear different groups of people speaking different varieties of English. I think this is something that we need to realize. English does not belong to those people in the UK only, or in New Zealand only, or in the US only. It belongs to everyone who speaks English. So variety is very important, whether it's the inner circle variety, that's okay, or whether it's the outer or expanding circle variety, which refers to Filipino English, for example, Singapore English, or many other different types of Englishes. It doesn't really matter whether you speak with the native variety or with the outer variety, because nowadays, if you want to learn English, you need to be more realistic. Your goal should not be to achieve native speaker fluency. I don't think that is desirable, number one, because you will lose your identity. And number two, from a second language learning perspective, it is not achievable. I think you need to double check with Yun Sung later on whether it is possible to become or to be able to speak like a native speaker if you are from Thailand, if you are from Korea, or if you are from Malaysia, for example. Okay, nowadays the goal of language learning is more realistic, and effective learners of English also understand this. When they learn English or French or whatever, their target goal is to be able to speak the language in a way that is comprehensible, in a way that other people from Japan, for example, from Korea, and from other places can understand you. I think that is extremely important. Another important thing, important consideration is this. When you speak, you need to be able to be perceived as somebody who is socio-culturally competent. So the second one is basically behind the idea of intercultural competence. So in addition to the usual communicative competence, I think we need to add that bit. And effective learners of English also understand this. If they speak English with people from China, for example, I think it's very good, it's very appropriate for them to understand a little bit about what is appropriate culturally and what is appropriate socially in that specific context where English is used. So native speaker fluency, native speaker competence is no longer the only goal, or maybe no longer the most important goal of English language learning. If you look at Yun Sung, if you look at me, for example, I think our English is fine. I mean, we are able to understand, and we are able to be, and people understand us, very well. Do we speak like native speakers of English? We don't. Do we want to speak like native speakers of English? We don't. We don't want to lose our identity. My identity is what defines me as Pak Willy, as a person who is big in teacher education. Number 10, the last one, number 10. Now, effective language learners use powerful language learning strategies. What do I mean by powerful language learning strategies. Let me show you an example here of a polyglot. A polyglot is somebody who is able to learn, and speak, fluently, maybe 10, maybe 20. Now this guy is super special because he is able to speak, 50 different languages quite fluently. Now we may be wondering, what strategy did he use to acquire all these different languages? Well, he used many strategies, many of the things that Yoon Sung mentioned earlier on. But he also used one special strategy. It's called shadowing technique. He did that very, very regularly when he tried to pick up a new language. Shadowing basically is to repeat what you have heard, to say again what you have just seen, and to basically to read along or to speak along. Now here are the steps. Let me just walk you through very quickly the steps of shadowing. Let's say that you have a TED video that you like very much. You watch it once, and then you watch it again, and then you start to read along. So you hear, you see what the person is saying, and then you do it right after or immediately after. And then you do it again and again and again. Remember Yoon Sung says this again, again, practice, practice, practice. This is a kind of perfect practice that I meant, that I referred to earlier on. And if you need to use the transcript, by all means, use it. Remember RM. First, he started watching the video with the Korean translation, and then with the English translation, and then without the translation. So having the script in front of you can be extremely useful because it makes the language more, easier to understand. It makes the language more comprehensible. What happens when you do a lot of shadowing? I mean, you can't just do a, shadowing for 1 week. It won't help you very much. You need to do it on a sustained basis, 3 months, maybe 6 months. The benefits include this. You become better at listening. Your listening ability or your listening skill becomes more fluent. You may be able to become fluent speakers. Your grammar and vocabulary also improves. This is not your explicit grammar of the language, but it's the grammar of the spoken language that after listening, after hearing for quite some time, these grammatical features sort of, they stick in your head. And when the time comes for you to use the language, these grammatical rules will just come out just like that. And finally, your pronunciation will also improve a great deal. So that is the benefit of shadowing, what I would call a very powerful strategy for people to use. My 5 habits again. The first one is to be gritty. Now, gritty has 2 components, remember? To have passion, and number 2, to have perseverance. And number 2, habit number 2, or habit number 7 if you like, you need to have a growth mindset. Forget about fixed mindset. Everyone can be successful if you are willing to put in effort. The next one, errors are your friends. It's okay for you to feel embarrassed, but do not let that feeling slow you down. The next one, habit number 8, preserve your identity as a speaker, as an English speaker from Korea, from the Philippines, or from other places. That, I think, is extremely important. And finally, use strategies that polyglots, or people who can speak different languages, use to help them improve on or acquire a new language. So those are the 10 habits, 5 from Yoon Sung and 5 from me. However, I have a bonus for you. Habit number 11. What is habit number 11? Here you go. Read this, take a photograph if you want to. Successful learners share their top 10 habits with other learners. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. Oh, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willy and Dr. Park Eun-sung, very good. Wow, it's a very insightful, and it's very interesting talk about the 10 habits. So now let's see all the questions. We got quite a few questions here, but the most questions I received is, how can I apply to be your TA, Dr. Park Eun-sung, because your TA are so handsome and very good looking. Do you have any answer on that point?
Oh my God.
All right. Okay. So, well, let's get back to okay. So this question is for Dr. Park Eun-sung.
Yeah.
So our audience says that okay, the overall, she can see the importance of the input. The CRILs provide EFL learners with ample contextualized exposure to target language input. Many Asian countries have implemented CRIL in the curriculum. What is your view?
What is CRIL?
What CRIL is the content language integrated learning.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yes. So CRIL. So what is your view on CRIL in the Asian context? That's the first question. And the second question is, can you tell us about pros and cons about using CRILs? Any challenges or any benefits for the CRILs, or anyone, or Dr. Willy?
But CRIL is, if I'm correct, it's popular in Europe. And the person who posed this question mentioned that many Asian countries have implemented CRIL.
Yes.
I wonder which of the Asian countries he's referring to, because in Korea this is very difficult to implement, and I know that we haven't been thinking about this. I thought it was a relatively new concept in Asia. So if the person who posed the question could
clarify it a little bit.
I understand the question. In this part of the world, I think the term EMI is more widely used. EMI is English as a medium of instruction. I understand that a number of universities in Asia, especially the top universities, they offer international programs where the teaching of economics or social studies or sciences or mathematics is done through the medium of English. So,
right.
So if I could respond to that, yes, I think that is a good way of providing language input to our students. And if the program is done well, I mean, EMI is a bit like CLIL, basically. If the program is done well, I think there's a good chance that the students will be able to learn, quite a bit of language in the process, in addition to learning or acquiring the content through which the language is taught. Now, having said that, it may be a little bit difficult to implement. I think you need to have a whole set of things ready to run the program. I mean, the teachers or the professors will need to be trained in how to teach content using English, number one. And number two, you need to make sure that the students are ready, whether the students have the sufficient knowledge to understand the content being delivered in a new language like English or in French. So these are things that need to be considered. But if you ask me, what would be a very good approach to add the quantity of input? It's very simple. You just need to implement extensive reading or extensive listening. Yes. This coming in the next few days, there'll be a big event on extensive reading. Basically, I think it's on the 2nd or this week, basically, the 28th of the 29th, organized by Thammasat University. And we have been able to invite the top person, actually, the father of extensive reading, to come and tell us what extensive reading is all about. The name of the person is Richard Day, Professor Richard Day. So come to that session, and I'll be there as a moderator.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Okay, moving to the next question. What is the difference between interactions and engagement?
Now, Yun-sung is the expert in that area.
Okay, so interaction has to do with conversation taking place between two or more people. Engagement is quite different. Interaction can happen with or without engagement. I think engagement has to do with the emotional value attached to whatever it is that you are doing. So you can be truly engaged in an interaction, but you can still interact without any engagement. So when somebody is truly interested in the topic and in making the meaning understood, that person is really engaged. But again, you can have interaction without any engagement.
Yeah, good answer. It happens a lot at home when you are having conversations with your spouses. Occasionally you are engaged, but most of the time you're not even listening. Not because you're not respecting your spouses or anything. It's because the topic is very light, it's very casual. You know, you don't really have to pay attention. You already understand what the other person is trying to say. Yun-sung, right?
Right.
So you don't have to listen.
You nailed it, yes.
You don't have to listen with great engagement all the time, because that will be a bit weird, isn't it?
Right.
Yes, please, next question.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so next question is for Dr. Willy. What's the difference between gritty learners and motivated learner?
Yeah, very interesting. I think Yun-sung and I can do this together.
Yes.
This is related, actually. Being gritty has to do with two things. Number one is passion. Number two is effort, basically, sustained effort. These two go together very nicely. Motivation is also about effort, actually. Yes, Yun-sung mentioned about the goal, about the vision. What do you want to be able to do after 1 year of learning English? And that's your goal. Yeah. Now, if you really believe that your goal is important, you will feel motivated to put in extra effort in order to achieve the goal. The notion behind effort is common in areas such as motivation, engagement, or grit. Effort, effort, and effort. Your effort becomes more focused. Your effort becomes more targeted if you have passion, for example, and your effort becomes more sustained if you have a very clearly defined goals. Like in Yun-sung's case, for example, examples, if you want to become a politician, if you want to change the world. I've always wanted to do that, actually, change the world. I've not been successful, but I'll keep on trying until eventually I get there.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Anything to add? Yes.
I think motivation provides the fuel for you to be gritty. I don't know if that makes sense.
That. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they are very much related, but if you're motivated and you want to achieve that goal and you have to become gritty, so they are very, very much interrelated. But motivation, having motivation, is there a before and after? Having motivation, that's I think that's something that you need to start with to be gritty, to have grit, to achieve something, for you to persevere in whatever you want to achieve.
Yes. Let me just say something about passion and perseverance, because this point needs a little bit of elaboration. The passion element is so important because sustained effort can be very, very tiring. However, if you have that passion, you don't feel tired. You will keep on going. You will spend 2 hours, 3 hours, and so on, and you don't feel tired. In fact, you feel happy because you are able to fulfill that inner desire to do something that is that you are passionate about. So I think gritty, or being gritty, or the notion behind grit is really very powerful. You have to have these two things. Number one is passion. Number two is perseverance. The next question then is, can we grow our passion? Or is it an either or situation, whether you have the passion to learn English, or you don't have the passion to learn English. But to me, I think we can grow our passion. And in fact, if you look at Yun Sung's presentation on input, on extensive reading, on extensive viewing, actually, you can develop that passion if, in reading, if and only if you find the book that you really, really, really want to read.
Yes.
Your passion will grow, your passion will develop, and after 6 months, you'll be surrounded with a huge amount of input. Not only 10,000 hours worth of input, but maybe 1 million hours worth of language input. It comes with passion, actually. Yeah, thank you.
I totally agree with you, because the passions, like when we have passions and we read a lot, we want to do more. And, you know, without even, you know, relying on the school system. So that's great. Okay. Getting back to the crew. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So I saw that comment about Taiwan and Japan. And I'm sorry, I sort of misunderstood. Yeah, Cleo, I think, like Dr. Willy said, if you are referring to EMI classes or CBI classes that focus on content, we are actually doing this in Korea as well, at the college level, at the university level, not at the secondary level. At our university, in the English department, all the courses are taught, all the content courses, subject courses, applied linguistics, techniques and principles of language learning and teaching, all of these courses are taught in English, and that's doable at the college level. I don't know if this is doable at the secondary level in Asia. At the college level, I know like KAIST, Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, the courses are taught in English, the content courses. These are all EMI courses. Students have the proficiency level to handle content, handle the dual focus of language and content. But at the secondary level, there's the implementation issue with you know, finding qualified teachers. That's very difficult.
I think some elite schools, some elite secondary schools can do it, and also international schools. I think there's a growing number of international schools in the region, actually. And the whole thing is taught in English, so it's kind of an immersion program.
Right, international schools, right?
International schools,
So, I mean, my take is at the college level, it's very doable. You have qualified professors, instructors. At the secondary level, prep schools with money can afford this, but difficult to implement otherwise, I think. Yeah, but again, it's a wonderful way to make sure that students get the amount of input needed for language acquisition and also content learning.
Yes, and as far as I know, in Thailand, we implement the Creole things in the high school level as well. You know, we learn math, science, in English as well. Okay, so back to the interaction and engagement. Another question asks, which is more desired in the ESL setting?
ESL setting?
ESL, not EFL. So in the ESL.
Interaction and engagement, which is more desirable?
Right.
They are both desirable. Whether it's ESL or EFL, interaction is what you need to you know, get feedback, to receive input, to produce output, to make your output comprehensible. So interaction is what you need, but plus engagement, that would be even better, right? So yeah, I mean, you need both. Yeah, you can't say one is better than the other. So interaction with engagement, that would be the best combination.
Very good. So the next question, as a language teacher, how can you motivate the low proficient students who don't care about learning? So any tips from you all? Like if the students are very low proficient and they do not care about learning at all.
Well, that's an extreme situation. If that is, you know, the situation you find yourself in, Two things you can do. Try to motivate them. And after 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years of trying, you're not successful, what do you need to do? Move job, change school.
I think
But more seriously, I think, you know, I don't think this, well, generally speaking, because English is taught as a subject matter. I think the first thing for teachers to understand is to accept the fact that the majority of our students are not motivated. I think that is something that we need to be aware of. Most of our students are not motivated. And that leaves us with just one question. And that question is, are you a motivating teacher? If you are not, then there's no way you can motivate your students. You have to become a motivating teacher. If you are not a motivating teacher, then you need to learn how to motivate, you know, how to become more motivating. I have written a small paper actually, looking at how teachers can be more motivating in the classroom. I summarize this in terms of the 5 T. 5 T's. The first
Can you
T,
share with us?
Yes. I will share it with you very quickly. The first T is the teacher. Remember the way you speak, the way you talk, the way you relate to your students, the way you behave, the way you dress. Everything about you has a motivating effect on your students. Yeah. If you dress very sloppily, for example, if you speak without any respect for your students, they will not feel you know, appreciated, and they won't be feeling motivated at all. So the teacher becomes very important. The focal point actually is the teacher. That's the first T. The second T is the teaching method. Have you been using the same teaching method every day? If the answer is yes, then chances are 100% your students are not motivated, because you yourself have been, you know, doing the same thing again and again. You walk into the classroom and you start, please open page 10. Who wants to open page 10? Because yesterday the students also did the same thing. They opened page 10. So you need to try to develop a wider variety of teaching methods. That's the second T. The next T is the teaching materials. What sort of materials are you using? Can you make changes to the materials that you're using? You know, very often we hear, but we have to use the course book. We have to use the textbooks provided by the school. Can you make changes? I think the answer is yes, you can. As long as you're responsible for their learning, schools will close their eyes. Make changes to the materials so that they become more interesting and more exciting and more motivating for the students. The tasks and the activities, that's the next T, yeah? I think you can find different ways of designing tasks that are more interesting, more exciting for your students. And the final T is tests. Make your test less frightening. I think our language tests are very, very scary. Make it easier for your students to break it up. Instead of giving one big test, break it up into smaller tests. These are known as, you know, assessment for learning type of thing. It's more, you know, continuous type of learning. So if you are able to do this, I think your students will feel a little bit more motivated in your lesson. You can't expect everyone to be motivated. But if you are able to get 70%, I think you are already the best teachers in the world. Yun Sung.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, motivation is a big issue now. Everybody has an interest in something, right?
Yes.
Even the least motivated students, they must be interested in something. And
Yes.
if you are a motivated, dedicated teacher, you would want to find out what interests these students, what kind of interest this demotivated or amotivated student has, and present materials that pertain to his or her interest that can make it more motivating. That's one way, yeah, because we are motivated because it's interesting and fun, right? So what makes it fun? What content, yeah? Another thing is, you know, we're motivated because we find out we're good at it. You know, we sort of feed on success. Oh, I can do this. I'm good at this, yeah? So if you can somehow instill in your students a sense of success with just little tiny activities that you bring to class. That could be motivating.
Yes, I think that's an excellent point, Yun Sung. There's somebody who developed a theory many years ago, theory of motivation, and the theory is called expectancy value. Students will become more motivated if they know that they'll be successful in completing a task, the expectancy of success. And the other side of the point is value. They need to be able to see the value of what they're doing in the English language classroom. What do I get from reading these materials? Do I feel excited? Do I learn something useful for me? So that is another theory of motivation, which I think is very important, but very often neglected by teachers. Expectancy value theory of motivation.
Very good, very well. Thank you very much. So I think you just answered this coming questions, but if you need to add up or something, or, so let me read the question. I assume that many students consider English important for their studies and future career, but they might not have much passion and perseverance. So how should I help them realize it is more than important? So basically, you already mentioned that, it's not just important, you have to see the value of it. So that's great. Thank you very much. So feel free. So let me check on the chat box here. Oh, and some of them also interested in reading your articles. Where could they find your articles or, anything related to successful learners?
Yes, I have created a website, and my website contains hundreds of free resources for teachers of English. Free means free. I'm not going to ask you to pay anything. It's free. It's because I have passion for sharing ideas with other people. And the website is called Willy's ELT Corner. Willy's ELT Corner. In fact, I've just provided the link for the PowerPoint slides that we just presented, both from Yun Sung's PowerPoint slides and also from my PowerPoint slides. Now, if you explore the website a little bit more, you'll be able to find like more than 15 ebooks that you can download for free, and many other references and resources, including a discussion on the habits or the secrets of learning English successfully.
Great, thank you very much. Wonderful, wonderful, very good. Okay, is there any other questions at this point? We still have some time for you. All right, we're still waiting.
Everybody's hungry for lunch.
Okay, all
don't
right.
know.
Fair enough, fair enough. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, very good. So in that case, let me sum up this webinar. Okay. So, all right. So here we are once again. We are right now in the first TEFL program organized by TEFL program Chulalongkorn Universities on the topic of top 10 habits of successful language learners of English. And we have our very, very special speakers, Dr. Park Eun-sung and Dr. Willy, to come here and share their experience and their insightful, about these 10 habits that I'm sure one of us might have. So, we want to recap a little bit on the key points for this one. So the first one for Dr. Park Eun-sung is input. So you have to have a meaningful input. The second one, you need to notice the language features, and then interaction is important in order to give out the meaningful input. But at the same time, you always need to have both visions, and also you need to make sure that what you want to do, your dream and yourself, idle selves for your, okay, that's the first 5. What about Dr. Willy. So Dr. Willy provides us number 6, which is greedy. So you have to have patience and perseverance. And then don't forget growth mindset. That can help very much. And also you can see that mistakes is okay. Errors are friends. You know, don't be scared to make mistake, because if you never make mistake, you never learn. And then of course you have to value your local identity, because what the aim of right now is we're not focusing on the native like accents. So we need to contain your self identity and also speak internationally intelligibly too. Okay, and last but not least, you need to have the strategy in order to learn language. And those are the top 10 habits of successful language learners of English. Thank you very much, Dr. Willy and Dr. Park Eun-sung, for your insightful talk. Thank you, thank you. And thank you, audience, for your participation. Allow me to introduce our next webinar, which happened tomorrow. So Sunday, June 28th, from 10 to 12, and we are honored to have Emeritus Professor Paul Nation. He's gonna speak, and he's gonna give a talk on what matters in vocabulary learning. So if you already register, you will already have the link. So I will see you again on that one. So last but not least, thank you so much. And we're gonna have the Zoom feed group photos. All right, yes. All right, so if I will ask everyone, if you feel free to, you know, feel like you wanna turn on your video so we can have a group photo session together. Right here. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So I think yes, Ajahn Pampimon.
I would say that we cannot see the attendees from here. This is
Oh,
just
I see.
so I don't think it's necessary. But for
Wonderful. No problem at all.
since I appear on the screen already, I would like to thank Dr. In-sung Park, and I would like to thank Dr. Willy Renandya for, like, you know, give us an honor to receive you as a guest lecturer or guest speakers today. We gain a lot, I'm sure. Okay, from the insightful like information and, you know, the great tips for teachers, I would say, how to increase, let's say, the ability of the students, and the students themselves, they can learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Pampimon, our TEFL
Khop khun
director. Thank you so much. Okay, so once again,
let us have the honor if we organize like the project too. Let us receive you again.
we would love to have you again and work with you again. Thank you so much.
Both of you, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, and a lot of people also asked about the email, which Ajahn Dr. Willy said that he will post the link. Oh, I forgot to say, Ajahn Willy. So this is the title, right?
No, Ajahn Willy.
Ajahn Willy. Okay,
Yes, there you
very
go.
nice. Yes, yes. Okay, and if you're interested and if you wanna, you know, listen about this topic again, we're in the process of setting up the TEFL channels on YouTube, and so you can, you know, watch this one again later on. So, well, thank you. Please stay tuned though. But thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, our speakers. Thank you, Ajahn Pampimon, our director of TEFL program, and thank you all the participants and attendees for coming and joining this first webinar.
So I would like to thank you attendees as well, all participants. Thank you for the great support and, you know, the participation. For this session at the very beginning, it might be a rough, like, you know, stage a bit to enter, because we use little webinar platform, which, you know, you might not be familiar with. I understand. You get like better next time. Sorry for the inconvenience at the very beginning.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you for hosting
Thank
and
you.
inviting. Yeah.
Have a nice
Bye.
lunch นะคะ both of you
Yes.
All right.
สวัสดีครั
ขอบคุณ
บ
ค่ะ
บ๊ายบายครับ
Bye
สวัสดี
bye
ครับ ขอบคุณครับ
Bye.
บ๊าย
Thank
บาย
you
อายอง
안녕.
บ๊ายบาย